Testing one, two.
Brother Karim Sergeldin, he is the founder of the Noor Human Consulting. Noor is a mental spiritual gym for Muslims to get support through personal relationship and family needs. Brother Karim hosts the Coffee with Karim podcast on YouTube. Please check it out. Really nice and valuable podcast. It discusses topics like being Muslim today, psychology, and relationships. Without further ado, we're going to give the stage to Brother Karim. Welcome to IOK. This is your first time with us,
Thank
and
you,
we hope
man.
we have you again, inshallah, talking today about
not
the
if you're
5 key of
smart.
connecting. What is it?
I said not if you're smart. Jazakallah khairan, man. Thank you so much. Did Sister Iman tell all of you that there was going to be a very difficult exam at the end of the lecture, or no? All right. So my name is Karim, and my background's in the cross-section of Islamic spiritual practice and psychology. So that's really my passion, is a Western model for Islamic psychology. Or in other words, an Islamic psychological approach for Western Muslims, their experience in particular. So today what I'd like to do is discuss 5 keys to improve connection in your relationships. And the way we're going to do that is first recognize a bit more about human nature and what are the 3 stages of human intimacy that we have to accomplish, because they're all connected, and also get a sense of how everybody thinks in here. So let's start with what's what. So I'd like to ask the audience questions, and we'll just, raise your hand when you have an answer. I'm going to jot down some notes, all right? So first thing I want to ask everybody is, to you, what does it mean to be a good Muslim? Just throw out some words that you think applies. What does it mean to be a good Muslim if someone asked you that? Yes, sir. Practicing and good in society. Okay. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Manners. Yes. Good character. Praying 5 times. Anyone else? Yes, please. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, someone who can emulate the sunnah of Rasulullah. Any other good ones? Yes, sir. Accountable for actions. Love it. We are going to get along great, guys. Any other traits? Okay. Thank you for that. Now let's try this one. What does it mean to be a good human being? Yes, sir. Good in society, fulfilling whatever's possible. I didn't hear that last part. Got it. Fulfilling responsibilities. What else does it mean to be a good human being? Honesty and good character? Yes, ma'am. Caring. Kindness. Anything else? Yes. Empathetic towards others. What if somebody had good akhlaq of Isa alayhi salam? Is that okay? If that's all they got access to, right? All right. Any other traits for a good human being? No? Okay. Let's try, what does it mean to be a good parent? Oh, you need more coffee, sister, huh, for that one? What does it mean to be a good parent? Yes, sir. Role model. And that will probably include some of the words we described the first 2 categories, right? Yeah. pass it on, model, etc. Anything else? Okay, knowing right and wrong, lawful and unlawful, being friendly. Anything else? Understanding. All right. Excellent. Now, I don't see too many children in here, but we are all technically children of somebody. So, what does it mean to be a good child? Yeah, exactly. At what age? Oh, man. Well, think about it. You were all, we were children, or we are children, and we also probably have some kind of a nice speech or lecture when we tell our kids, this is what it means to be a good kid, right? So what does that include? Anything different from what we already shared? Gratitude. I know, right? Come on. They just don't understand, do they? I know I loved my mom a lot more when I became a dad. Whoa, subhanAllah. Gratitude. What else we got? Respect. Anything? Obedience. Responsibility. Exquisite. Anything else? All right. So, now that we got those terms, that's the what's what. So just let me make sure this is moving along here. So the first section now, what I'd like to move into is, now I'm again coming from more of a standpoint of, I'm a human scientist, okay? So I study human beings, and that includes, of course, religious practice, spirituality, etc., because in my understanding, religion is meant to do everything psychological and for well-being of the individual and the collective. So it's not separate. Is it coming up here? Okay. All right. So that's going to be our future family, everybody. Get ready for that. That's Friday nights together, where everyone's on their device, virtual reality, but we're in the same room together. That'll be the accomplishment. And we hope that's not going to be our destiny in 20 years. So that's part of the intention of today's presentation. So the first 3 levels of human intimacy. You guys don't mind if I stand up and do jumping jacks and stuff, right? Okay. So the first thing of what it means to be human as a creature is we got to think about this, really. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs nothing, correct? This is part of our theology. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدْ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدْ. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one without a second. And ahad is very unique because it's not wahidun, which just means the first of something else, right? Like there was the first person who got here today, but many other people came after, right? But ahad means there is one without a second. There's nothing else like it. There's no number 2, 3, 4, 5 version of this, period, okay? So that's ahad. And part of that meaning of as-samad, which is also strictly unique to Allah, is the meaning of as-samad is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs nothing and needs no one, while everything needs Allah and everyone needs Allah. So by default, as a human creature, you are a creature of what? Of need, of weakness, of fragility. We're in this together. This idea of I'm independent is a complete illusion. There's nothing independent about you. Just try me. Go ahead. Say, no, I'm independent when it comes to this. I'll prove to you in 5 seconds that you're not. We are totally relying on every single mechanism, whether it's nature, societal, structural, family, and so forth. There's nothing you did on your own completely. Maybe generating thought, but even there, Allah lets those biochemical neurons communicate for you, and He's the one who controls your heart so that your blood flows. You don't even control your heart, and your heart is the thing that if it's off, you're done. SubhanAllah. So the first thing we have to recognize as mammals, as creatures, because the definition of human being is al-haywan al-natiq, which means you are a speaking or logical, rational animal, right? You don't differ from the lions, tigers, and bears out there as far as physically what you're made of. We're all made of the same stuff in the universe, right? It's all energy, it's all stardust, it's all carbon and oxygen and water and you name it. It's all there. So what makes us distinct is this aql and the power of language, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us. So as human beings, in order for us to first survive as creatures, we need safety and predictability in our environment. This is the first thing that we need for feeling any type of intimacy with our with others or the environment. So I'll give you a simple example. If I say, I feel safe walking down New York Street at 10 o'clock, right? Because, it's just me by myself. So I feel safe about that. And it's predictable enough. I've been there enough times. Or the reason why we all live in the neighborhood we live in is because there's some level of safety and predictability. Or why we send our kids to that school. Or why we have these friends and not these friends, right? The first thing we all need to survive is safety and predictability, because how are you going to function on coming to an IOK talk when you're worried about getting, shot, God forbid, or there's a war-torn area that you live in? There's no safety and predictability here. And we need that first as a grounds. Once we establish that, we can now go to level 2, which is trust and security. So if I might feel safe about walking down the street in New York City at 10 o'clock, but I'm not secure about my wife and kids doing the same thing on their own. That's the whole other level, okay? In human relations, this is also what we're looking for. How am I going to trust and have security in a person if I don't even feel safe around you? My interactions with you have been unpredictable, right? One day you're like this, one day you're like that, one day you're calm, the next, you're yelling, 1 hour you're like this, and 1 minute you're like this, and some people are like this. Very volatile. You just keep the person always tense. That's not safety and predictability. And I'm definitely not going to get to security and trust when that's the experience, right? Security and trust, by the way, connects directly to iman. That's what it means. We translate it as faith. In faith in Old English actually means trust, by the way. That's why when I say, sister, I have faith in you, that you can pick your sister up from the airport, right? Having faith in you means I trust you. I'm secure that you can get the job done. We use those phrases all the time, right? No, I really trust them. I know they'll get this done. I know they'll close the deal, yeah? So trust, iman and faith is not actually an irrational thing, because you don't trust or have security in something that is not rational. Do you? Of course not. Do you say, I feel secure that if I jump from there, nothing will happen to me? Why? Because it's irrational. It goes against the laws of physics and, boom, gravity. It's not something you should trust and have security in, right? Once we have trust and security in our relationships with humans, with Allah Azza wa Jal, we now evolve to attachment and bonding. This is really now where a union comes between the hearts of people, between the soul of the human being and the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't really attach and bond and deeply love until you have 1 and 2 established. Make sense so far? Okay, because the keys that we're going to talk about today is going to be ways that hopefully we can establish these 3 stages or levels that every single family and every single human being needs, not only to survive, but to thrive. Okay? So these 5 keys, there's so many, but I wanted to focus on 5, and I'm really nerdy, so I wanted to keep it all they all begin with the letter A, so it's easy for you to remember. So inshallah, that's what we're going to review today. So what do we got up here? Let's read them together. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right. Now let's break these down, okay? So these 3 things, if you notice kind of this target-looking thing, right? You need acceptance. It's that outer layer that's going to get me to this 2 and 3 and 4 and so forth. And then you have that heart or the core of affection, all right? So I can't really have approval or disapproval, or at least an appropriate place to do that in relationship if I don't even have acceptance and allowance of this human being in front of me, right? That's not going to happen. So let's break this down. What is acceptance? In simple put, alhamdulillah, we're all Muslims. We're always talking about istislam and submission and surrender and all this stuff. That's part of all of that is acceptance, right? How many of us chose to be the gender that we are, the ethnicity that we are, the parents that we were born into, the time in human history we were, here we are? None of us chose that, did we? So completely surrendered to the hand of cards, so to speak, that you got. Now you got to play the game, right? Acceptance is this. It's in recognizing I have to accept who I am, I have to accept who my child is, I have to really accept my circumstances, my conditions, whether it's health or financial or what have you. And this idea is recognizing we all get a package of life. Pros and cons, yes or no? Pros and cons, yes or no? Right? This guy is, mashallah, super brilliant, but, he's losing his hair, right? This sister, mashallah, is so generous, but she struggles with backbiting. This guy over here is, makes a lot of money, but he's cheating on his wife. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways, pros and cons, that can be used for or against you in akhirah. This is how it goes, right? So the first thing is we have to accept that I am who I am and you are who you are, whether it's child to parent or parent to child. So I'll give you an example. As a child, things that used to really be difficult for me, let's say, between myself and my father. One of the ways I was able to truly accept and surrender to the dynamic we had is by recognizing where he came from. He had a set of pros and cons in his life that was out of his control, right? His parents were a certain way, or he went through certain experiences that made him the way he was, but he also was still an improvement of how his parents were. And inshallah, we're all, modified versions of our parents. But the point here is that as a parent, we also want to look at our kids and recognize they're not necessarily just going to be the way we want them to all the time. They're not necessarily going to fit into the ideal, box of my perfect son or my perfect daughter. It doesn't always happen. That's what this acceptance is about, is some level of surrender, and you have to try your best to see the person as they actually are, not how you want them to be all the time. And again, this doesn't mean you don't guide them and give them nasiha. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about accepting the existential package that everyone comes with. In other words, Allah chose to create them and He designed them in a specific way, right? They have talents and gifts and they have growth areas. And some of these things are, genetically pinned, and some of it has to do with environment and experience. So that's the first key that we have to understand, and we're going to talk more about how that's going to work. But the opposite of that is what? Denial and defiance. Very similar to kufr, covering up the truth, covering up what really is reality, right? Because shahada is the opposite. I testify to the truth. Now I got to get moving with that. Yeah? If I deny the truth, then I'm kafir, or I'm in a state of kufr. That's what these words mean. So why should we cover up about ourselves or others? And that includes how we see and accept ourselves, because a lot of people who struggle with mental or emotional difficulties, it's because they're not able to truly accept who they are and their experiences, whether positive or negative. Second is allowance. Allowance is recognizing that human beings are mistake-making machines. Yes or no? Definitely. Right, sister? Man, how many mistakes? SubhanAllah. If you don't count more mistakes than you think you have good deeds, then you've got to recalibrate something. Okay? Because allowance is this perfectionist fallacy. It's the opposite of this perfectionist fallacy. And so many people I know who I've worked with that struggle with obsessive compulsive, addiction, anxiety, it's because they believe they have to be perfect Muslim or they can't be one at all. And I always bring it right back to the Quran. The story of Adam alayhi salam. I love this story. I mean, we could spend years on it, right? But think about it. Adam alayhi salam he was hooked up. Doesn't get any better than that, real estate. Jannah, right? Allah's like, hey, I'm going to make you a wife. Enjoy yourselves in my beautiful resort. Except don't come to this tree, right? Not that tree. It says hadha, which means this one. So there's no confusion. Not which one over there in the distance. No, this one. Just don't come near this one. Everything else, go ahead, enjoy. So when you think about it, he only had one rule of Sharia to follow at the time, right? Just don't eat from this. Everything else is game. And what happened? Still made the mistake. When you have everything you need, really, We're bummed out about making mistakes because we're just trying to get to Jannah. Adam alayhi salam is already there. Okay? This is who we are, people. Really. Don't, think otherwise. You are a mistake-making machine. But the lesson teaches us, what are we supposed to do about it? But we are incredible engines for growth. This is who you are. That's why the first lesson or gem is how to make tawbah. It's like Allah letting us all know, guys, this is like what you guys are going to be doing a lot of. So first lesson is tawbah, because you guys are going to need it. Yeah? That's who we are. This is allowance. We have to recognize and allow, not in the sense of green light, go do haram, ma habibi, enjoy yourself. No, but rather, things are going to happen. Inevitable, whether you like it or not. Sah? Just stop pretending like it's not going to happen. It will. But what matters is preventative measures, guidance, and what to do about it when we do mess up. Like Adam alayhi salam, what did he do? He didn't do what Iblis did, and Iblis is the example of what we shouldn't be, right? That guy's nuts. He's totally deluded and arrogant. Made himself on par with Allah Azza wa Jal. And La ilaha illallah, the very thing that he tricked Adam alayhi salam with, he couldn't even give himself, right? The reason why he was the reason how he was able to trick Adam alayhi salam was by convincing him that you're not going to stay here forever, which is very different from the Judeo-Christian story. Their tree is about knowledge. An Islamic version, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already taught Adam knowledge, right? Because he blew the ruh, taught him allamahu al-asma. He has the knowledge. That wasn't the problem. But what was the problem was the existential anxiety that we all have, which is what? Death. You're going to die. This is for the immortal. You're not immortal. Adam didn't necessarily know that. He also didn't necessarily know what a lie was or being manipulated was. He didn't interact with anybody before, except Hawa, who was probably a good woman, right? So he used his anxiety and fear of losing what he had to make him go against the one command Allah told him. Think about this, guys, ladies and gentlemen. So it was this fear of death that he provoked in him. And then he promised him, if you eat from this, you'll live eternally. And Iblis couldn't even give it to himself. What's the proof? After all this episode happened, when he basically, puts his fist up to God and makes that bet with him, I'm going to show you that this was a big mistake to create Bani Adam. And then he says, grant me life till the end of time, so I can basically be evil. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I'll give you what you want. Even though he could have just zapped him into oblivion and said, you're finished, it's over. He said, here you go. It's Allah's rahmah, think about it. And because it's Allah's wisdom, he knows how the story is supposed to play out. But that's something shaitan couldn't even give himself. He still had to ask Allah. This is how deluded he was. He's so arrogant that he's like, I'm better than all this, and by the way, I still need a favor. So I can prove to you that I'm better. Think about that. La ilaha illallah. And that energy and his minions are constantly gnawing at us, because their goal is to destroy our karama, to make us corrupt beings. And even then, Iblis in that same story says, I can't get those who are sincere and follow your hidayah. He knows that. There's like a force field around those people. May Allah make us from them. So allowance is recognizing that, hey, if my kid got caught drinking, or my daughter is a little too much into the unhealthy constructs of feminism and questioning Islam, or whatever it is, allowance is where we say, okay, I don't really, feel comfortable with this, but it's happening. And so when we try to control everything, the opposite of allowance is being very restrictive and controlling and this, what actually happens is we don't help our cause. We only push people away more. Rather, we have to recognize that part of every single human being's timeline and growth is they're going to make mistakes. They're going to have ups and downs. And we should rather look at it as like paramedics, right? Paramedics never assume there will never be an accident or a medical issue, do they? They just say, we hope there aren't any, but when there is, what happens? We're prepared and we'll be there to heal. This is how we can approach things. So that's part of that allowance. We can't tell the world never to get into a car accident or to get hurt again, because that's not reality. And neither is human beings that don't make mistakes or even commit sins. The next key is approval. Now, approval is when we have to first focus on validating the good in others, their qualities, their traits, promoting and nourishing their sincere efforts to improve, even if they're not perfect all the time, because none of us are, right? And think about it. If I establish a space where I really see them as their own being that Allah created and chose for them to be here, and their package of pros and cons is part of my growth or test as, let's say, a parent or as a child for a parent. And I also have this key of allowance down, that, hey, the point here is that we're humans are mistake-making machines, but we're going to always be growing and learning, and that's why we're in this together. You are much more fit now for the approval role, which most of us put at the top. I just disapprove, I disapprove, I disapprove, I don't like it, you're wrong, don't do this, don't do that. But if the child doesn't feel that deeper connection and almost, healthier philosophy, if you will, then the approval or disapproval is not going to have as much meaning or impact on the person's psychology, right? Why is it that young kids, think about this, parents, we love when they go talk to a nice big brother or sister in the community that we trust. Why? Because usually those people outside of the family, they are okay with acceptance and allowance. They're not like, oh my God, you drink? I can't, deal with this, right? They're like, oh, let's talk about that. That's a struggle. Or, hey, I went to college in America too. I know what that's like. Let's talk about this. And that way, when you're giving advice that approves or disapproves, it's a lot more meaningful and relatable to the person, because the person doesn't feel like they're being talked at from up here, right? Or down to. But I'm speaking to you and with you and through you. And again, I'm not taking away from authority of parents, but it depends on the age, as you said, sir. But certainly from the sunnah we have, around the puberty and on, we really want to make sure that we're transitioning a bit more into a companionate role as well, not just a strict authoritative role, right? So approval is our ability to critique also the bad behaviors, not the person's total character. Because that's very different, isn't it? Hey, you're a loser. You're never going to amount to anything. Completely harsh. Of course, I don't mean any of that, right? This is attacking the total being. Did you feel like if someone hears that every day, you're stupid, you're this, if you're not a doctor, you're going to be in the gutter or whatever. If you hear this every day, you don't think it's going to impact you? So these types of absolute criticisms don't have room for allowance and acceptance and growth, because I basically put you in a bucket that you can't get out of. Versus, I'm very disappointed in blank. This is not you, your character. This is not becoming of you. You should know better. What did we learn from this, right? So you're still acknowledging the wrong and disapproving the wrong while leaving room for some air to breathe so the person can actually, grow and evolve from this. Otherwise, what's really the point if someone is in a constant state of despair, which is what Shaitan wants, doesn't he? He wants all of us to believe you are pathetic and unworthy, and you should have never existed in the first place, because that's exactly what he felt the day Adam came into existence. And it won't end until we're gone. Okay? This is part of the human drama. The opposite of approval is really just rejection, disfavor, refusal to allow the person to grow. And we don't point out just the acts that are wrong. We keep making the person feel like their existence is wrong. Any comments or questions about these three before we move to the next one's explanation? Any stories or relatable scenarios? All right. So, next we have attention. Attention and affection, and I snuck appreciation under affection because I usually do it as 6 keys, but I wanted to stick to 5 for the sake of time. So attention, it's number 1, it's sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ used to turn his whole being to people when he addressed them or they addressed him. You know, he was never, peeling a mango and kind of like looking like this and, yeah, what do you need kind of thing, right? We do that all the time. I'm on my computer, I'm on my phone, I'm multitasking, right? He would turn his whole being to the person and give them what? The karama, the integrity and the honor that they deserve because Allah created us. لَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي Adam, right? That's how the Prophet ﷺ was. Even if it's somebody at the grocery store who asks you a question about which soup you prefer in the line, right? You turn to them and you say, I really like this type from what I've tried, not over the shoulder, right? This is the level of, akhlaq that the Prophet ﷺ demonstrated for us. Attention is also about being present and engaging with the people in your life and your environment, right? Pay attention isn't just about pay attention to the boring lecture Karim's giving right now. It's also about pay attention to your environment. Who's around? What sound was that, right? Pay attention. Your kid looks like they've been depressed for 2 weeks, and it doesn't cross your mind to go, hey, are you okay, buddy? Right? Oh, as long as no one said anything, we're just going to keep going with the default mode here. Yeah? That doesn't get us far. So attention includes this awareness of our surroundings, and the Prophet ﷺ used to do this. He used to ask about the states of the people in his home. When he used to notice somebody wasn't in the community or at Jum'ah, frequently he would ask about them. He paid attention. Right? Ya Abu Nughayr, ma fa'al what was it? Ya Abu Umayr, ma fa'al Nughayr. You know this story of Umayr, and he had the baby parakeet who died. So the Prophet ﷺ, he's the messenger of Allah, rahmatan lil alameen. He's dealing with all humankind, salvation, and the jinn, and he's asking this young boy about his little parakeet bird. What happened? You okay? SubhanAllah. Right? So this idea of I'm too busy, I'm too important, I don't know. Let's see your resume compared to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Huh? Affection. I want to spend, this is so important, guys, and I've been working with the Muslim community, pretty much since I was a teenager, from volunteering at summer camps and all that, all the way up until schools, and here we are today. And I noticed that in a lot of our cultural understandings and some families, again, not all of them, but some families, their affection just is non-existent. It's non-existent. And we can go into all the science and research that demonstrates the importance of affection to physical health, emotional health, social health, you name it. It's just check, right? I'll give you a small little example. After World War II, one of the theories of psychology for attachment and bonding theory, which is connected to our discussion today, it's all about connection, intimacy. They were, as you know, World War II, the Europeans went at it. And we're talking, insane numbers of people were killed. Many kids were orphaned. They had orphanages set up in different parts of Europe to take care of these kids who had lost their families. And they found that even if you had kids, babies to toddlers, every day they're fed, they're burped, they're changed, they have clean clothes. They were dying out very early. And if they did live, they had extreme social and emotional imbalance. So one of the psychologists who started this theory was like, what's going on here? Because from the perspective that we just need our physical material sustenance to survive, right? We just need food and water, then what's going on? And they compared it to another orphanage where the nurses were a lot more merciful and compassionate. They not only did the functional aspects of the job, but they actually talked to the babies and kids, hugged them, kissed them, said sweet things, developed personal, relatable, intimate connections with them. Those kids lived and actually thrived. Isn't that interesting? So affection is needed not just to enhance in your well-being, but you literally need it to survive as a creature from the beginning. And you find this with a lot of mammals. Another test they did is they bring baby chimpanzees and monkeys. The avatar mom that had milk, warm bottle of milk, versus the avatar mom who is just had a nice fuzzy blanket on it, and the other one had like a robotic body, like it was cold, aluminum or whatever. The baby monkey, guys, still chose the one that felt snuggly and warm versus the one with milk. Talk about survival and what we need to survive. Think about that. This is how important affection is. Was the Prophet ﷺ affectionate? What's a story we know about the Prophet's affection or his mercy and advice he gave about this? Come on, we got to know one. What about the guy who had 20 kids and never kissed them? What happened there? You know the story? A man saw the Prophet ﷺ being very lovey-dovey, kissing Hassan Hussein. He said, by Allah, I have 20 kids. I never touched or kissed one of them. The Prophet looked at him and was like, what can I do for you, man, if Allah took the rahmah out of your heart? Dang, that must have hurt to hear something like that. But it's so crucial to who you are, right? The Prophet ﷺ showed us this with touch, with words of endearment, with thoughtfulness, with care. All of these gestures that anybody here would appreciate if we got it. It's intrinsic to your survival and thriving, guys. I had a kid that I worked with once. A lot of problems at school, academic, social, rebellious, this and that. From 14 to 15, I worked with him. You know what healed it? It wasn't this big, complex, and analytical process. The kid was never touched by his parents. Really. He never got a hug from his own father, who he looked up to dearly. And at that age, he wanted to bond with his dad, which is natural. And just from hugging his dad every day, which was very awkward for his dad because he wasn't used to that. He didn't grow up in that type of learning. It's like as if the volcanic lava that was bubbling his blood, it all calmed down just through touch. Your power of healing through touch is more than you understand, ladies and gentlemen. That's why most of us, when all we need is a hug from mom, everything goes away, right? Really, because there's nothing like the rahmah of mom. The Prophet ﷺ, his name Muhammad ﷺ means basically you can't stop praising the man, right? Yet Allah says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Even though Allah could have used many other words. We sent you as a hidayah, as a nur, whatever. But He said rahmah. Allah has more than one or two names? Yes, right? But every surah except for Surah At-Tawbah begins with what? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. That's the letterhead of every surah, right? Why didn't Allah say Bismillah al-Karim al-Aziz, Bismillah al-Hamid al-Majid over here? We would have actually memorized the names like that, right? If we do our Quran. There's a point here. Rahmah, 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 connected to the womb, mercy, mother, warmth, expansion, compassion, nourishment. All that is included in the archetype of mother and the womb and more. But I just want to really drill this point. So including in that, of course, is recognizing being appreciative is a form of affection, and it's also integral to our theology and our akhlaq, because Allah reminds us this a lot, right? We all want to say alhamdulillah wa shukrillah and alhamdulillah and shukr to others, because when you're not shakir, guess what you are? You can be running the risk of a state of kafir, right? فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرُكُمْ وَاشْكُرُونِي وَلَا تَكْفُرُونَ. It's one of my favorite verses. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, remember me, I'll remember you. So when Allah's on your mind, you're on His mind, right? That gives me goosebumps, just saying it. And then right after, وَاشْكُرُونِي وَلَا تَكْفُرُونَ. Be from those who are grateful or thankful. Because when you're not, you're in a state of kufr. You're in denial. You're covering up the blessings and the ni'mah that you actually have. And the first ni'mah and blessing that we all have is this life and gift of consciousness, and the fact that Allah communicated with us and said, hey, this is what's going on, people, right? You're not these little ants floating on this blue marble in space and you can do whatever you want. There's a story here. And I'm so great and powerful that I can't even reveal myself fully to you, but I'm going to send you some notes and messages. You know, it's like the big company that you work at. No one's ever met the CEO. or nobody's met the big sheikh, of the famous, traditional tariqah back home or whatever, but everyone knows he exists. It's like the Wizard of Oz, like who's that person behind the curtain kind of thing, right? This is the majesty of Allah Azza wa Jal. And even then, Allah still communicated. So communication is really important. And the opposite of these things, we want to be aware of, because we know things more clearly by knowing their opposites. The opposite of attention: unreliable, neglectful, oblivious. Like once in a while you have that brother. I'm going to pick on us guys, okay? We're going to take it for the team, for the sisters. It's like, go watch the kids, honey, I'm going to Target. Sure, babe, I'm going to watch the kids. The guy's on the computer the whole time and probably didn't look up more than 3 times in 2 hours, right? And you come home, there's Egyptian hieroglyphics on the wall with permanent marker, right? the couch is completely rearranged. Your jewelry and makeup is missing because the kids were playing dress up. And yeah, the man, mashallah, he was at the house. They didn't die. Nobody broke in, right? But was he attentive? And even that could lack, right? A type of, yes, ma'am. Well, there you go. So that stuff matters, because God forbid something worse happens, like, baby falls down the stairs, right? I'm in that zone right now. One of my little ones, she's, ready to be in the Olympics. Every opportunity she has, if that gate downstairs isn't closed, she's going to be going up the stairs. And her sister will follow her. And her sister isn't as quick as her, but it's the split second. I'm like, I just got to check this message from Sister Iman about IOK on Saturday, and boom, the kid's already on the stairs. Like, it's stuff like that, right? So attention is also very, very important for our survival and enhancing that connection. Now let's try to look at how these would look in our daily lives, now that we got these concepts down. And remember, the whole point here is to have those 3 stages of human intimacy established. First one was safety and predictability. Let's just go back real quick. First one was safety and predictability, and second was security and trust, and then attachment and bonding. Sorry, these animations you gotta. So when you think about that, I'll give you an example. A couple, they're happily married, alhamdulillah, 20 years, 4 beautiful kids, somebody has an affair. They were in 3, and what happens? They have to go back now to establishing level 1, right? The attachment and bonding, the opposite of that is rupture and abandonment, whether it's emotionally or physically, right? Or financially. People do different ways. But this is how it works. If I feel trust and security with someone, but you do something to destroy that pattern or that frame of reference, we're back at level 1. We got to reestablish safety and predictability, because I don't know what's going on here, right? And worse, like the affair. That's why now the focus now is we got to rebuild safety and predictability and trust and security before we ever get back to attachment and bonding, because the person's heart has been shattered, right? This is serious. So we're keeping these in mind, because these keys help us get to these places. So what can we do today as a community or as a family? For acceptance, having curiosity and intrigue by default is very important for how we engage with our children, with our friends, with our neighbors. I mean, Allah taught me a lot of lessons, because I made a lot of mistakes. And one of the things that I learned was, really don't assume anything about anybody, right? Don't assume somebody is in any category until otherwise proven. Seriously. Because I've had it all. The guy you think, or the neighbor that's just like, what is this person? They're so far from Islam. Look at how they talk, and you have some conversations with them. You realize, wow, this person's could be a saint. And then there's the people, mashallah, branded with everything, prestigious and religious. And there's other stories going on. You see? So always have that curiosity and intrigue And don't assume anything, because we don't know the secrets of people. And I'll tell you right now, as someone who works with people in private, confidential places, everything you know about people that you see is only 10% at max of what's really going on, right? So imagine there's 90% unknown. Don't assume absolute things based on 5 or 10%. Managing and dealing with the self at hand. In other words, like, I'll give you an example. My kid, even on the way here, he's become a singer, mashallah. He loves to sing and do sound effects. But I don't blame him, because I was the same way when I was a kid. I watched a video of myself when I was young visiting my parents recently, and my wife's like, see, he's just like you, so you can't get mad at him anymore for being loud and animated. I was like, you're right. Got to have that acceptance. Yeah? So, like in the car today, on the way here, I'm trying to just, do my dhikr and clear my head for this thing, and he's just in the background. Woo, woo, really? I'm like, Habibi, can you maybe, do those sound effects after the seminar? That'd be great. I love you, bro, And then he quiets down and it's over. But if I don't accept that this is his character, I'm not going to manage that other than what? Yell, right? Be quiet, or stop it. I'm going to do something really important. You're messing with my head. Yeah, and you go on and on and on. It's like, that's not acceptance. Okay? Be aware of our filter biases. In other words, I want the ideal without being real first. You have to accept what is before you get to what ought to be. If you want your daughter to wear hijab, inshallah, okay, we can get there. But you're not going to get there by ramming the ideals down her throat and making her feel guilty every time she walks out the house without it, right? Or whatever other scenario you can think of. So you got to work with where the person's at, which connects to allowance. They're all connected here. Acceptance is also your ability to receive and give what is possible and likely in a relationship. So if you're, let's say, a very affectionate person and you're married to someone who isn't, you can't expect they're going to become 100 out of 100 affection on the scale if their nature is maximum, they'll max out at 50. You have to accept that. Or find affection in other ways that aren't physical, because there are certainly ways to feel that. So this is all under acceptance in practice, and we'll have a scenario at the end to help. Allowance is patience for their timeline. Allowance is patience for their timeline. In other words, remember, we're gonna all scratch our spiritual elbows and knees in life. And while we do and try things, Allah does. And I'll give you a very recent example. I work with this young man, beautiful kid. I've known him for years. This guy was the ideal. He had Harvard, Yale, these universities texting him to ask if he's going to accept their acceptance letter or not for college. Like, he was one of these kids, right? Academically, just wow. Okay? And literally in his senior year, everything fell apart. He got involved with the wrong crowd, relationships, lies, deceit, went against me, his parents, complete mess, right? Just the dream went and turned into a nightmare, okay? And I was coaching his parents with these keys. I said, look, while you do and try, and while I do and try, just know that Allah is doing. And I'll say, just this detail is important, because this kid got so obsessed with joining the military. Like, he had these American friends that were all military, this and that, so he turned into one of those guys. And he basically was going to throw his whole life away just to join the military and be with this group that he got all this validation and acceptance and attention and approval from that he wasn't necessarily getting at home. And I told his parents, look, you can't control everything. You can't keep restricting everything. He's still going to find ways, and he did. He got, he drives and all this stuff. There's only so much you can do. Track him. Okay, fine, you tracked him, but he's out all night. Oh, are you going to drive 3 hours to get him for where he is, or are you going to wait till he comes home and yell at him? How's it going to work? Long story short, this kid thought that he could now do whatever he wanted to do. He thought he could be in control. He's like, no, I'm going to set up my life this way. Military is going to give me college, it's going to give me a job, it's going to give me money, it's going to give me community. He thought he had it all worked out. Guess what? When he wrote his college essay for Harvard, Yale, and all these great places that he worked so hard to get to, he wrote about the military. And it was a horrible essay. They all said, sorry, you're not going to fit here. Just like that. Boom, it's all gone. Then he was like, okay, I still got the military. Guess what? Allah had him damage his arm. He got into a car accident in the middle of all this heartbreak he was causing his parents. Alhamdulillah, it wasn't too serious, but if you have a serious injury with a scar, military may not take you. And I told his parents, you see, Allah keeps putting blocks, and this is all for him to wake up and snap out of this. And he will, because it's Allah who's in charge. Don't worry. While you're doing and trying and you have the intention, don't worry. Allah is orchestrating things. And guess where he is now? At home, unemployed, in humility, and he's working on purification of the heart with me now. And he's back to where he is, square one, so to speak. And I just witnessed this. This is all fresh. I just spoke to him yesterday. So this is what I mean by allowance and having that recognition that you're going to have to recognize life is going to teach us things that sometimes we can't as parents teach our kids. Because Allah is the best professor and life is the greatest university. We're just associate professors, But it's not really it's not our gig, right? So when we're there, we can now have more valid approval and disapproval. Because one of the reasons why that young man ran away basically or went against all this is because he didn't feel like he got real approval. He only got approval for two things: academics and are you a good Muslim, right? Which isn't enough, believe it or not, for a human being to feel full, because there's more to life than that. So he was able to start to take now all the things that, subhanAllah, I was telling him, his parents were telling him when he was in the thick of his rebellion. Now he's saying it for himself, and he's only 17. Right? So never assume someone's going to stay stuck where they are. Sometimes we lose our way, but it doesn't mean we're lost forever. Attention, simple tool, making eye contact, ladies and gentlemen. I find it fascinating, especially when I work with couples. I say, okay, we're going to do an exercise. Look into each other's eyes for 30 to 60 seconds, no talking. And it's usually not always easy for everybody. Sometimes they can't do it. It's like they keep looking, they keep laughing. I'm like, just look into her eyes or look into his eyes and breathe, and that's it. It's just 30 seconds, very simple. And some people are like, I can't do this. It's so weird. It's so stupid. I'm like, subhanAllah, you can make love to this person, but you can't look them in the eyes for 30 seconds? Something's off with intimacy, right? So keeping eye contact shows respect, it shows trust, and as they say, it's windows to the soul. As the Prophet ﷺ taught us, turn your whole being towards the person when you address them. Zone in is attention, right? It's not texting and talking to a person at the same time. Again, if it's something like, hey, don't forget to pick up chips for the barbecue, fine, right? But when it's an important subject, if it's not important, then you'll keep texting. If it is, then you shouldn't be doing anything else. You zone in on that person. And 3 minutes of focused, quality conversation with someone will save you hours of heartache and mistakes later. Right, gentlemen? So, nonverbal mirroring, because nonverbal communication is about 80% of what we say, not what we say. So if I yell at you and say, I'm not angry, and I throw a chair against the wall, are you going to trust that I'm angry or not? I'm telling you I'm not angry though, right? No, of course. So nonverbal cues is also a way to have attention and reflect. Notice when your kid's voice sounds off, and moms have an amazing power to hear tone differences. That's why men always get in trouble for stuff like that. Like, no, it's the way you said it. What do you mean the way I said it? I just said, I don't want to go. I don't know what you mean, like how I said it. But they pick up on these tones, right? Because mothers need to. They need to know when a crying baby needs to be changed, they're hungry, they're tired, this and that. To a man, it's all the same white noise, right? Or at least me. So nonverbal cues includes mirroring, voice modulation, tone, right? So if your wife comes home from work and says, my boss humiliated me, you don't start laughing at her, right? Unless you guys have that type of relationship where you use sophisticated coping mechanism of humor, fine. But you have to reflect that, right? Someone tells you, my mom just passed away. Oh, that's too bad, but the sale at the mall's still going on. You know, it's like, you're not relating to me right now. I just told you about a trauma and a loss that I'm having. Like, maybe we need to reconsider our Saturday shopping plans right now, right? This is all part of that, isn't it? So having that emotional availability and being attentive to surroundings, and I want to emphasize this especially for parents, you know, moms and dads. Dads, you got to be aware of what's going on in the environment, you know? And a lot of guys have told me this, and I'm the same. It's like, you know, when everyone falls asleep, you got to do that run around, make sure the windows are locked, the doors are locked, right? There's something about us, you know, just that protector vibe in us, right? And moms do it in a different way. But a lot of men have shared this with me. It's like they always go and they keep checking, or they'll stick their head out on the porch just for 10 minutes at night just to make sure the environment, you know, there's nothing fishy going on, because that's all part of your protection of the radius, isn't it? It's hardwired in us. And affection, which I went into, but here are some practical things I want you to focus on. Caring gestures here at the bottom. So for example, leaving notes, you know, sharing anything really, right? Food, sweet things, offering things to make things easier for people, right? If your wife has, excuse me, sorry, 5 kids crawling on her, and you're sitting on the couch with your feet up watching Jazeera and asking her when dinner's going to be ready? Really? Right? Show some care and rahmah. What would the Prophet do? What would Allah and His Messenger want me to do right now? This is how we got to think. Not what does my culture tell me is okay? What does it mean to be a man where I come from? Is that okay? Some of it is and some of it might not be. We have a standard, don't we? Who's supposed to be our teacher? Rasulullah or my grandfather? Right? Again, they could cross over, but that's the standard. Doing a task or an errand or a project together. So helping your kid with a science project. Or, you know, knowing that your husband doesn't enjoy going to Trader Joe's on his own, so you're like, yeah, I'll come with you, we'll go take care of stuff together, or whatever, right? That's all part of affection. Sharing memories, stories, updates, humor, and inside jokes. And I want to also mention that as parents, guys, one of the fast tracks to connect with your kids, especially when they do a mistake, is self-disclosure. You know, a lot of kids I've worked with, they don't know the first thing about their parents, really. Their favorite color, what were their dreams, what sports did they like when they were a kid, how did, you know, they don't know the human part of who their parents are. So how am I really going to relate to you? How is your approval or disapproval going to value for me if I don't even know anything about you, except you're my dad, you're my mom, and I got to listen to you, and, you know, you only love me when I act a certain way. So I made a little table here. Let's look at how these 5 keys will look. This is our closing slides with something light. So let's say your kid loves mustard on pizza. Sounds crazy, right? Do you like mustard on pizza, sir? No? Would you ever try it? Probably not? Okay. So this is like a light concern, right? Just a light one, just to see how it would look. So acceptance would be, they like mustard on their pizza, you know? That's how it is, you know? Everyone comes with their unique flavors, yeah? Allowance would look like, when it is pizza time, you actually ask that kid, you want me to get you the mustard to put on your pizza? That's allowance. You know, I don't like it, I don't agree with it, but you're allowed to have pizza with with mustard, if that's who you are, right? Approval would be, I guess everyone has their unique taste, or maybe I'll try it one day. Or maybe I won't. But part of that allowance is when they do put all that yellow mustard on their delicious pizza, you don't roll your eyes or make sounds inside and go, oh, that is just disgusting. That's not allowance either, is it? That's making the person feel guilty for who they are. And again, this is a halal example, so there's no reason for us to ruin our rapport because of this mustard. Affection would be making sure that there's always mustard in the house when you guys have your family pizza night. Or when you go to a restaurant out for, you know, pizza, you know, they always ask, do you guys want oregano, Parmesan, hot peppers? You say, yeah, and please bring mustard because Ahmed here loves mustard on his pizza. And it's okay, right? Attention is remembering they love mustard when you guys are in situations where there isn't any and they're going to have pizza. And if somebody else starts to poke at them for liking mustard, like let's say one of your friends, it's like, oh, your kid likes mustard and pizza, that's disgusting. You actually take your kid's side on that. You don't go, yeah, tell me about it. Thought the same thing. This guy, are you kidding me? And the kid's right there with, a yellow mustache, right? That's not affection. It's not allowance. It's not. So you see how they all connect and build off of each other and almost go backwards too, right? Let's take something like that's a little more mild to heavy. Like, I notice you're struggling with your salah. And in this case, I'm not talking about you don't pray at all, but you pray in 2-3 times a day, or missing Fajr, Isha, you know how it is, right? So acceptance is, I notice you're struggling with your salah. Some parents don't want to even think that there's anything wrong in that department. Like, no, my kids pray. Alhamdulillah. I see them pray, so they pray, right? But we don't know what's the quality of that, what's that all about, really. And maybe we notice they just don't pray Fajr or Isha or whatever. So acceptance is acknowledging we're not perfect. And allowance is going to take us to, look, no one's perfect, kid. Or if it's a spouse, it all applies again. No one's perfect, but we always want to strive for excellence. This is Islam, right? Nahassin nafsina. It's all about ihsan. How do I be better, best, more excellent than I am today? How do I improve tomorrow than how I was today and in the past? That's the path, because you're not supposed to be perfect. But you are supposed to strive for excellence. Approval. How can I support you in this? So it's like I accept that you have the struggle. I also want to approve that there's more good in you, and you have the seed of Iman, and you have the power to grow and change and evolve, because you are a being that chooses. And you now try to create a plan where you approve of their struggle or flaw, and you work with them. Let's talk about this. Let's go out for a milkshake and talk about maybe a plan we can support each other, because I know I struggle with it too. And the father, the mother are being humble with the child. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, you don't just raise your children. You're actually supposed to grow with them. Your kids call you out. They see, their fitrah is usually more intact when they're younger, right? So they see things clearly. I mean, you know this. All those are kids. They've called us out. They're like, oh, Baba, you said this and now you're doing that. And you're like, dang, he got me. And those aren't the times where you be defensive and, oh, I know better, and who are you, and I'm their father, and you shut up and obey. It's like, dude, that's not going to get you far. I'm telling you. It's when you're humble and you're like, you're right. You're right. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have raised my voice. And when you do mess up with your kids, go apologize. Wallahi, there's nothing wrong. It only gives you more power and respect in their eyes. Right? So, lastly, like if we had something very severe, like let's say they're in an illicit relationship, these things also apply. Look, I accept that you're struggling with this relationship, or this is happening. I mean, let's be honest, ladies and gentlemen, those of us who have kids that are growing in this country, your kids aren't going to stay virgins till they're 30 or 40 years old. I'm serious. Like, there's a 50 minimum, let's just say, argue with me, 50% chance they'll stay virgins. Those are still very high. In fact, the Family and Youth Institute in Ohio, they're a Muslim organization that focus on Muslims in the West and Canada, showed that Muslims, male and female, by the time they are finished college, approximately 50% of both genders have already had premarital relations. So let's get real, right? If you want your kid to somehow fast till they're 30 and done med school, and on top of that, they never interact with women or talk to women or guys or whatever in halal spaces, etc., I don't know what planet you're living on, because it's not going to pan out that way most of the time, right? We have to be very real about these things. And if they're not committing zina, 90% of those guys are addicted to porn by that point. I've also worked with those guys, okay, and some sisters too. So we have to be real about this stuff, guys, really. Preserving Islam isn't just about a bubble that we think is happening when it's not. We got to address those things, right? So zina is a common one with young people, because they're human and they want love and attention and affection and approval. And if it's not satiated in healthy ways at home, guess what? They're going to get it from Sally and Johnny, because it's really powerful to get all that stuff in a unique and novel way, isn't it? So lastly, just to wrap up, we want to, when we do the approval or the affection, remember we always focus on the act itself, not criticizing the total being or the person. This is very important because it leaves that room for growth and hope. And if we don't leave the kid with hope and only guilt and shame, you allow shaitan to come in and start smoking a cigar and go, awesome, I'm going to put the despair chain around their neck and yank them into hell. Because this is one of the biggest ways people stay stuck. All right, so just to wrap up, forgive me if I went over, but we tried to review the concepts here of the 5 keys, how they relate to the 3 layers, and we can open it up for comments, questions, or corrections, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Karim. Anybody has questions? Yes.
So my question is, what is your recommendation for the kids? Like, do you recommend they get married at younger age or get engaged, or how do we get past through this, that having them a relationship that is acceptable by our religion?
Well, what is a relationship that's acceptable by our religion? It's having a nikah. It's very simple. It's not a, yeah, I understand. It's not, but it's not a, every situation is going to be different. All I'm suggesting is, as a community, my advice would be, to answer your question, general advice is, we have to think about taking marital arrangements, premarital education, premarital events, spaces where our young Muslim men and women can meet and interact in halal, safe ways. I always recommend, for example, group dating. Like if Mahmoud loves Maryam or really is interested in her, Mahmoud and his 3 friends go out with Maryam and her 2 sisters and cousin and whatever, and they all go bowling, and then the guys go home and the girls go home. I know some people aren't into that, but dude, your kids are doing that anyways. Really. They're already doing that. They're not going to be at home until they're 30, right? Let's be real. So I think we have to find ways that allow us to preserve our principles by recognizing the societal conditions that we're in, and that delaying marriage is not healthy. And if it's a matter of finances, I understand that. It's not practical for everybody. But our issue is that we all want a specific setup before marriage happens. Like, no, you have to have your degree, you have to have an apartment, you have to make X amount of money, you have to have this big of a beard or whatever. It's like, well, we need to be a little more flexible to ideas of people can be married and not necessarily live together right away, for example. Again, I don't always recommend that, but I'm saying case to case, right? My point is what's more important? Preserving the values of our deen, or preserving the reputation, or what traditionalism, not tradition, traditionalism dictates, right? No, this isn't our way. Like, I just talked to a couple, in their culture, nikah means engagement. So they're not really married according to her parents. So when they make love, the father's like, you basically did something haram. It's like, dude, the guy got a nikah. It's just because in your head, in your construct, they're not technically married. But they are technically married. That's why the couple's so confused. And now the father is saying, you have to leave your parents' home and go get a house right now or apartment and set up shop with my daughter right now because this is considered wrong. You were supposed to wait until you were both lived together, then you consummate the marriage. And again, it's like all these standards and this that aren't always realistic. That's all I'm saying. So I just think that we need to really think about preventative as well as balanced measures, because 50% of the time they're going to do the haram anyways, whether you like it or not. That's the stats. And from my personal experience, I could verify that that's most likely the case. So how are we going to approach that? I mean, you guys are parents, you tell me. What's comfortable? What can you really realistically do? At least it should be a serious discussion, and there's environments which allow us to explore what is needed for this, right? Fiqh-wise, psychologically, skill-wise, and so forth. Otherwise, we're just, the whole look, our kid are just going to be a good Muslim and go to college and get 3 degrees, and then we'll start thinking about it. That's not going to work anymore. I'm telling you. The age we're going into, with the pornography, the sex appeal, the zina, even our own Muslim community, we've got people claiming nonsense, has nothing to do with Islam, and they are walking around with the Islamic identity. This is the time we're in. So we have to counter with the nur of the Prophet ﷺ and the tradition of our deen properly and practically, or else, it's not going to look good. That's just my opinion. Who works with you? You're my people. I know your stories, right? But thanks for the question. It's an important one, and something we'll have to do another. That's our next talk right there, Sister Iman. What do you say, sister? Yeah?
And Brother Karim is also Brother Ziad Ramadan's partner in Purifying Your Gaze.
Yeah, I'm working with Brother Ziad Ramadan. He's the founder of Purify Your Gaze. They specialize in overcoming sexual and pornography addictions anonymously for Muslim community. So I've been doing that for over 3 years, and I learned a lot about that in that specific department. So that exists, purifyyourgaze.com. It's a great resource for that struggle. And there's also talks on my podcast about that. So if you're a parent, there's certain signs you should look for, in your children, because there's a good chance someone's looking or using, right? It may not be they're addicted, but all their friends are talking about it, right? When I have 12-year-old sisters and high school sisters telling me this videos they get on Snapchat from their classmates, you would move to, some Taliban camp, seriously, just to get away from it. And I'm saying the other extreme because it would be that horrifying. If you heard it, you'd be like, oh my God, we have to go live in some crazy, strict Islamic place. No offense to anyone who's for that, but you get my point. It's terrifying. And I grew up here, and I'm considered, a pretty flexible guy. And even my jaw, dropped to my knees. I'm like, that is extremely alarming. And she's just sharing that, that's what guys expect from us. And I'm like, dude, this is evil. It's real evil manifestation. Really. You don't want to know. But if you did, you would take it very seriously. And if you want to know, you can know. You can find out. But Allah al-Musta'an, we don't want to take it lightly, I'm telling you. Please. I'm worried about it now. My kids are, still very young.
This is all important. I just don't want us to leave on a very heavy note.
Yeah.
I don't want us to leave being paranoid. May Allah protect our homes. This takes us back to the core issue, the importance of our marriages and our homes to be solid and to work on connection and communications from now.
No.
So the kids, when they're going through life, they're going to be tested. Allah's going to pull them to Him in His own ways. In this world, we're going to be tested as a group, and everybody's going to be tested individually. Allah wants to see how sincere we are. So when they are tested, who are they running to? Usually, if they're not your parents, they're friends. So make sure we're working on our marriages and our communications, looking into each other's eyes, even if it's not comfortable, like he said earlier, between the husband and wife, working on intimacy, communication. The kids need to see joy in the home. If they don't see joy and love at home, they will go find it somewhere else.
Correct.
Curiosity is everywhere. And this world is pulling us in all sorts of directions, not because we are living in America, even overseas.
Yeah.
Even in the middle of Saudi, even in Mecca. A test is a test. We just need to work on what we can do.
Everywhere we're human, Iman.
Yes, we're human.
Doesn't change.
صح.
Same species, right? Remember, what are we at the beginning? You're needy, you're fragile, you're completely dependent creatures. That's how Allah designed you on purpose. Because if you weren't those things, why would you need Allah through all the challenges, right? And I'll end it with a beautiful note.
Shukran.
So there's a beautiful philosopher, Christian mystic named Jean-Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, and he said that we are not spiritual beings we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience, but we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And this aligns with the Quranic worldview because you are a spiritual being in essence. Everything in our deen is about what? It's about making sure if your ruh is sound, everything else is going to be sound. The way you take care of your body, right? right? You take care of your ruh when you follow the sunnah when it comes to your diet and exercise. Yeah? That's why Ramadan is about putting all the needs of the body back and needs of the ruh forward. That's why at the end of Ramadan, if you do it right, you're lighter, you feel expanded, you feel confident, you feel strong, you feel the sweetness of Iman, and so forth. So remember that we are spiritual beings. We existed in the spiritual form, alastu bi rabbikum, before we came into the wombs of our mother, and now we're here playing out our life package, right? And then when you die, you leave, but your body stays, and it rots in 6 hours. But you continue. So your essence is not this. This is just a carrier, right? So that's important, because when we think about that and how we approach our worldly matters, we have to always keep the akhirah as kind of that background image of why this is anything matters and what we're doing all this for. So do we prevent marriage because it just doesn't look good to our community, or my parents won't accept that I'm letting my kid get married at 18 or helping them or talking about it even, because that's not how it is back home? Or do we think about what's it going to be in the akhirah for us? And that changes how we shape our intentions and our actions and our institutions and what services and social services we want to emphasize, right? I mean, I love Islamic architecture, really, but I think we can, if we build new masjids and new centers in the future, guys, let's bypass the minarets and the domes and put that money into things that we actually need on the ground, like feeding the hungry, helping people with addiction, domestic abuse, helping people. The marriage problem has been a problem since I was 17. I still have professionals today, 30s, 40s, and pushing it. Brother Karim, how do we get married? Really? These apps, these things online, you got to use what you got to use, But every major Muslim area should have a ongoing, consistent thing for all of these human needs that we struggle through. We're human, aren't we? Right? We still have the same issues. But we have Islam, which means we have a more powerful toolkit and responsibility than anybody else. Right? If we, took it in fully, inshallah, Allah help us. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا واعف عنا وارزقنا بالنور والحكمة والهداية. Any mistakes that you heard today is from myself, Karim. Any benefit is from Allah Azza wa Jal. Thank you for your patience and your presence today. I really appreciate your participation today. Keep me and myself and yourself and your families and my family in your dua, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum, guys. That's all right. Welcome. Thank you all for coming. One thing I usually like to do with youth talks is talk about like purpose and meaning. Are you guys open to that, or do you want to cast some votes for something else? Purpose and meaning of life. Cats? Sure. If there's a lot of ways we can get benefit from that. Don't try me with sarcasm. I'm from the East Coast. You want me to bring it on, I'll bring it on. So what's the difference between cats and dogs? Well, I heard a really funny story/joke. They say a dog goes to their owner, and the owner is always nice to him and gives him food and loves him and pets him, and the dog thinks to himself, "Oh, you must be a god," to the owner. When the cat gets love and nourishment and food and protection from the owner, the cat looks at the owner and goes, "I must be a god." Do you agree, cat lover? Yeah? You have a cat? Oh, you're not allowed to have a cat? Is that against Hanafi fiqh or something? Oh, that makes sense. No. My sister was allergic to cats. How about you? No? So any other suggested topics, or I'm going to go with purpose and meaning? You want to talk about da? Da's not a topic, girl. Any other requests or suggestions? No? All right. Her name is Alina Safia. I call her Safia though because her sister's name is Anisa, so they sound too close and it's just easier when you got to get, change of clothes for one. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. Thank you all for your presence and attention. I don't know if your Ustad told you, but you're going to have a very difficult exam after the talk, so you better pay attention, okay? All right. So, meaning and purpose. I think this is a big topic, guys. It's really important because I know when I was your age, certainly something I thought about, something I thought I was getting different messages and different influences around what that all entails. And of course, time and experience takes you in the places that it takes you. But what does it mean to have meaning and purpose in one's life? What do you guys think that means? Let's start with that. Raise your hand. Yes, sir, UCLA. To mean something to other people, to live on in other people. Is that what you said? Other people rely on you. So that's one way you're saying it can give me a sense of meaning or purpose, correct? Okay, great. That's a great starting point. What was your name, sir? Yes. Jamil, thank you, buddy. Thank you for participating. How about from the ladies' side, what is meaning and purpose? Yes, ma'am. Knowing why you're here and what you're supposed to be doing. Very good. Any other contributions? Meaning and purpose. What is that all about to you? Yes, sir, in the back. Why are you doing this? Why are you here? Right? So being more conscious of your actions. Anyone else? All right. So if someone asked you, let's say my name is Johnny, and I say, hey guys, I know you guys go to this IOK place. I don't know nothing about Islam. What does Islam teach us the purpose of life is? What would you tell me? To submit to God? Yes, sir. You can work for things in this world, but don't make it your end goal. Very good. I saw another hand up here, sister. Someone? Cat, right? Cat sister. What's your name? Zara. You know what's funny? I used to have a cat named Zara. Synchronicity. It's okay. It's okay. So, what else is it? What would if my name was Johnny? I'm walking off the street and I came here and I'm asking you guys, what's the purpose and meaning of life? What are you going to tell me? Got it. So Zara is telling us, guys, that from an Islamic perspective, we would tell Johnny it's to worship God and to spread Islam. Is that, do you guys agree with that, or do you think there's more to it from an Islamic perspective? Is the purpose of life just to pray 5 times a day and memorize Quran and go to IOK on the weekends, or what? You think that's it? Nothing else going on? What's your name, sir? Hanin? Khalil. Nice to meet you, man. Thanks for coming. What do you think, Khalil? You think there's something else? Yeah? What would be one other thing that you think is important to include? Be kind to other people? Yeah, for sure. So this is how I thought about it. And I'm going to share what I got. Take it or leave it. There's what we call prescriptive meaning and descriptive meaning. What are they? Sorry, I can't hear you. What was that? Huh? Hello? Hello? Can I turn the volume? Prescriptive meaning and descriptive meaning. All right, thank you. So, prescriptive meaning is the one that Allah and His Messenger and all the prophets and messengers taught us, right? So we can call that one, let's say, the universal meaning, because Zara, I do understand where you're coming from, that you got to take people's individual context into consideration. But from our perspective as Muslims, Islamic purpose of life is the purpose of life for everybody, whether I identify with it or not. That's the story. Am I right? Gravity exists, whether you like it or not, right? If you really don't believe gravity exists, let's do a test. Let's go up there and I'll toss you off and see if you fly. You're going to say, no thanks, bro, right? Because it's established. Whether I believe in it or not is up to you. You see, this is very important, guys, because now we live in a time, or we growing up here as Western Muslims, we're brainwashed, if you will, with this dogmatic individuality, right? It's true only if it's true for you. It's like, yeah, that's true to an extent, right? But then there's called objective reality. And objective reality isn't simply just constructed by my personal perception and that's it. In fact, Islam, the purpose of Islam, my understanding of it, is to align, modify, reconstruct your perceptive framework with how actual reality works. That's what it means to see things the way Allah wants you to see it. That's what it means to act in the way that is the prophetic tradition in different encounters. True or false? So prescriptive meaning is the universal meaning. Allah says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. It's right there, right? And that's the token phrase. Do you want to come up and give the lecture? Because you won't stop talking. I'm a nice guy, dude, but if you don't know how to respect the space, don't be in it. Okay? Thank you. I've been teaching for many years, so that part of me comes out and it's still there. Unless you have a question, raise your hand. So there's universal meaning. Universal meaning is that all of us are here to know Allah, to know our divine cause and origin and source and our return. Whether you're human or jinn. That's how important it is. And there is a recipe for that, isn't there? It's called deen. Your deen is the debt that you have to repay Allah, in a sense, because Allah gave you the gift of consciousness and existence. What's your name, dear? Jannah? I love that name. I hope we all get there, right? I hope, even if Allah just lets me be a janitor in Jannah, I'll take it. I'll be like, oh, I'll take it, dude. Let me be the janitor. Let me be the guy who takes Rasulullah's trash out every day in Jannah. I'll take it. What do you think? I got to get to know you better to joke like that, huh? All right. So, Jannah, what do you think about a person who thinks that their existence is, the question I had for you was, where were you 100 years ago? It's not a trick question. You didn't exist. Was there a Jannah who liked what she liked? No. That's what Allah tells us. Where were you before you came here? Right? Really. The only reference we have is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the spirits existed before they came into the body. But really, where were you? You weren't here. There was nothing. Consciousness is a gift. Existence is a gift. The fact that you can have ananiyat and say, I want, I am, I need, I desire, I don't like, I want this, I want, that's all a gift, because those are little sparks that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you from His reality, right? You get to see and hear and choose and have language. You can construct and make things. Allah can create out of nothing. We have to create or make using what already exists. What's your name, sister? Hanan? Aliyah. Too much rock music as a kid, you know? Turn those iPhones down, turn those headphones down. Aliyah, if you didn't exist 100 years ago, and you won't exist probably 100 years from now, right? When you think about that, just the fact that I'm here right now is a huge gift that's priceless. This is why Islam teaches us, if you kill a soul unjustly, it's as if you did what? right? That's how precious and valuable each of us are. That's why even if you don't kill somebody, God forbid, you don't kill someone's soul or heart or personality by bullying them, by disrespecting them, by being cruel. That's all part of killing people too, inside, right? So if we did not exist and we're here, this gift, this dain that we have, this debt that we owe God, is to use the power of our consciousness, our choice, in a beautiful way, not in a destructive way or a rebellious way, because that's possible. So this is all the prescriptive meaning, right? This is the story. We have Adam alayhi salam, and we know the story, right? MashaAllah. That's the universal meaning. That's for everybody. But what I want to focus on with you today is the descriptive meaning, which is the particular meaning. So assume that your universal meaning of Islam is, let's say, a car. All the working parts of a car have to be a car, or else it's not a car, right? When you look at a boat, yarhamukumullah, when you look at a boat, you say, oh, that's not a car, even though it has a similar purpose, right? It gets you from one place to another, except you need water versus a road. So imagine universal Islam is everyone's car. Everyone needs to get where they gotta go and get where they need to go efficiently without polluting the air and so forth by using cars, let's say, right? The specific type of car. But yours descriptive meaning is now asking yourself, Aliyah, Zara, Jannah, Jamil, right? Khalil. Someone was Jamil, wasn't there? Jamal. And my buddy here, what was your name? Mustafa. Beautiful name. Mustafa. We all ask ourselves, why did Allah choose to create you, Mustafa? Why did Allah choose to create you, Khalil, Zara, Jannah, whoever you are? That's particular meaning and purpose. This is now where it gets fun. Because this is now where you get to choose how your car is going to look on the outside, what brand and model you want, what kind of, car freshener you're going to use, what kind of rims you want to put on your car, what kind of speakers you want, what kind of music you're going to play or not play, which qari of the Quran you're going to listen to, whatever. This is now where that personal design and crafting comes in. In other words, if Islam is my path to Allah and path to becoming the best version of a human I can possibly be, descriptive meaning and purpose is how Karim does that, right? So we all, alhamdulillah, we try to pray 5 times a day. We try to use the same, texts of guidance and so forth and principles. But maybe the way that you're calling for truth and justice is going to be like this, and mine's going to be like this, right? And we're all going to have different talents and gifts and strengths. So prescriptive gives us the code for everybody. So Islam is your path to Allah, and Islamic psychology is your individual journey on that path. In other words, how are you going to make what you're going to make out of this? How are you going to use the toolkit of Islam, the anchoring, the organized spirituality, the guidance, the hudud, etc., to now give your gift? Because remember, Allah chose to create you and me and Donald Trump and everybody. Yes or no? Did Allah not know Donald Trump would exist or you would exist? Yes or no? Of course not. He knows everything at once. There's no new thing that Allah learns, right? Unlike us. So if Allah chose all of you to be here, that means there's something unique to you that you're supposed to do. And we already know this even scientifically. Every human being is unique, right? Will there ever be an exact replica of you ever again, sir? What's your name? Zain? There will never be another Zain just like this again. Yes? Even, we know this, even the fingerprints, right? Everybody's is different. You ever thought about that? Everybody has their own organic barcode that's different. And it's all chance, right? And random. That's the best alternative we've got. It's all just random. But now it's organized and complex somehow. So, personal purpose isn't just about acting, thinking, and believing the same as everybody in your community. It's also about taking that collective wisdom and knowledge and personalizing it, making it relatable and meaningful for you, and finding the ways that you can give your gift and live up to the optimal version of your Muslimness, if you will, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, had intended for you. And that's what I wanted to say. I'd love to hear your thoughts or questions about that. But is that clear? The difference between prescriptive and descriptive?